Well, the time is just gone 6 minutes to 9. Is We continue this morning, and we are now taking a look at the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, which provides a number of countries, African countries, with duty-free access to U.S. markets. And the key issue here is how likely is this to occur, or when is this likely to occur? Whether it's going to happen before the 2025 expiration, which is in September 2025. To unpack all of this, we are joined by Donald Mackay from XA International Trade Advisors. Donald, good morning to you, sir. As always, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Yes, Donald, with the U.S. elections on the go, obviously, this possibly could even influence the outcome as far as AGOA is concerned, and in terms of whether it's going to be the Democrats under Kamala Harris, most likely, who is the candidate, or possibly even Donald Trump. But the key issue here is looking at South Africa and retaining its status as a beneficiary. How crucial is this?
Yeah, I think probably the most important issue of all is who wins the elections in the US. So I think our team in the US did a great job of arguing for an earlier and an extended update to AGOA. But I think in reality, this is really a political issue in the US. And I'm hopeful that we get an early extension, but I'm not optimistic that will be the case. I think if the Democrats win, we've got a really, really good chance of an extension of AGOA next year. And if Mr. Trump wins the second term, I think the prospects of that being extended are far slimmer.
Well, we know and we can understand why under Donald Trump and why you hold these views and sentiments, Donald, because, we know Trump obviously somewhat of a loose cannon, number one, but also in terms of Trump and his agenda for Africa in particular. There is some history during his tenure as the President of the United States of America.
Yeah, there is. I think, in a kind of a weird way, though, he clearly doesn't have many positive things to say about Africa, and having used some rude words to describe some African countries. But I think, from an African perspective, his first term in office was fortunately mostly described, I guess, as him not really paying attention to Africa. I think if we can get him to ignore us, then that would be a good outcome. But I think South Africa's taken a very public stance on the horrible conflict in the Middle East, the war that's going on in Ukraine. And I think it's less a question of what the stance is that we've taken, but how we've communicated it. And so I think from a US perspective, we would now be, kind of front and center of their minds, and a lot harder to ignore than we were the last time around.
Well, definitely. And we know the last time around, AGOA was under threat, particularly in terms of South Africa and its support of Russia with the war against Ukraine. And the U.S. always seems to put itself first in terms of its own national security, in terms of its own foreign policy interests. And they could actually come back and, give you somewhat of a beating by using AGOA, by using forums like AGOA as a threat against the country. And we know there were major concerns.
Yeah, we can't underestimate that risk. You're quite right that the US acts in their own interest, and at this point that may not be aligned with ours. But having said that, the US is also in a kind of a battle with the likes of China for things like minerals on the African continent. And so the US can't be too aggressive with South Africa. We're still the probably the largest economy, and certainly the most important economy from this perspective on the continent. So I think it would be difficult for the US to play a little bit too hardball with us, just because they're also looking for better relationships on the continent. And how they treat South Africa is certainly a part of that consideration, I would think.
No, Donald, obviously, just looking at it domestically from a South African perspective, this is important. Now, having come out of elections ourselves and with the formation of a government of a national unity, this is extremely important for us because what we're trying to do is win over investments. We're trying to win the world over to look at South Africa very, very differently under this GNU. And we need to also provide certainty to investors in South Africa and also on the continent in general. So this is important from a timing perspective in terms of when this reauthorization of AGOA by the United States of America or this renewal, how crucial and how important it is.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge we're going to have with AGOA perpetually is it is a political tool. It doesn't pretend to be anything else. The US can withdraw the benefits really at any time they wish. Our trade with the US is incredibly important. If we want to have a greater degree of certainty, we might have to sit down and give serious consideration to a trade agreement with the US. So Kenya, for example, has gone that route, and that would remove the political ability of the US to kind of dangle benefits and then withdraw them. Both Minister Patel, when he was in office, and before him, Minister Davies, said they were averse to entering into new trade agreements beyond the continental one. But in the case of the US, this might provide us with the certainty that we need. It would also open a much bigger portion of the US market. Yes, AGOA does give us preferences, but there are many products that are also excluded from AGOA, and for those, we would then have preferential access. So it's certainly a consideration that should be given.
And also, I think from a South African perspective, early on with this government of national unity, we seem to be pushing for this quite early, where we see the Trade, Industry and Competition Minister now, Park Stow, actually pushing for a relaxation. And again, a statement that came from the department over the weekend says that the South African delegation to the AGOA forum with the minister and his deputy, Andrew Whitfield, welcomed support that was expressed by the Biden administration and members of the Congress. So South Africa doing a bit of homework up front, but again, a lot depends on the outcome of the US elections and who is going to be in power.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have not a bad word to say about the South African team, who I think did an exceptional job. I just don't think that in itself is going to be enough to swing it one way or the other. I think it's important that they did what they did, but ultimately, this is a domestic American issue more than anything else. And the US politics will drive this, I think, far more than the team that we sent through. Although I'm very proud of what they did, and certainly should be commended.
Well, Donald, thank you very much for that. As always, we do appreciate you taking time out here, even though on this chilly morning right here in Johannesburg. All the best to you, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Donald Mackay with us from XA International Trade Advisors. And with that, we're going to go for a break. We'll be back.